For close on 4,000 years, nomadic yak herders have survived the extreme conditions of the Tibetan plateau. They have survived through ingenuity, resilience and toughness, and being attuned to their environment, to the high altitude and severe winters. Now they face the greatest survival test of all. In just 2 decades, from 1995 to 2015, Chinese officials have decreed the forcible removal of more than 2 million Tibetan nomads from their traditional grassland habitat. Ending their way of life by settling them in housing ghettos. Why? How? With what impact? That's what I set off to find out. Tang is a frontier town full of dogs and dust. The dust gets into your lungs and your camera. The dogs keep you awake at night with a constant chorus of barking and yapping. My plan is simple: to hit the grasslands close to Tang in early August for the annual Nomad horse racing festival. Summer festivals are a way for nomads to get together, show off their horse riding skills, exchange news and party. At this event, attracting nomad clans from far and wide, I am practically guaranteed good footage of nomads in action. But the plan evaporates. At the last minute, Tang Festival has been cancelled by Chinese officials. No reason given, no explanation. This sudden turn of events has left me scrambling for other ways to come in contact with nomads. All I am left with is a yak burger. So a great civilization comes to this: yak burgers for tourists. Yak meat is tough and chewy and hard to digest. But yaks continue to be sold for their meat, disappearing. The nomad herders are vanishing, and the grasslands of Tibet are turning into desert. I travelled around Tibet long ago for the adventure, was drawn to the vibrant nomad culture, and kept coming back. You'd be hard put to find a tougher human than a Tibet nomad. What captivated me is the cheerfulness of the nomads in the face of extreme adversity, their exuberant spirit and their down-to-earth sense of humour. Now, no laughing matter, in the space of a few short years, I find myself witnessing this remarkable culture being destroyed and feel compelled to speak out about it. In the traffic cruising through town on motorcycles are tall, brawny camper nomads with tassels of red yarn woven into their hair. The campers have a proud demeanour. They are descendants of the fierce warrior clans of East Tibet, who in ancient times were much feared by the Chinese. They have a reputation for bravado and banditry, and they are not above stealing yaks. Urbanised campers have traded in horses for motorcycles, but they still carry a dagger, sheathed at the waist, and not entirely decorative. Is the cancellation of the horse racing festival something to do with the headstrong campers? Are Chinese officials afraid of large gatherings of camper nomads? I discovered there are smaller horse racing festivals close to Tang. I arranged a Tibetan guide to get to one, a place only accessible on horseback, crossing meadows of wildflowers, tackling a high pass. My video camera is being banged around on the back of a nomad on horseback. And when the skies open up and rain pours down, I worry whether the camera will be still in working condition and how on earth I will get any film at all. Cresting the top of a high pass, the rain stops. I'm considerably distracted by a breathtaking vista. Far below is a pristine valley with a beautiful lake. This is where the Nomad clans gather. What surprises me is how important sacred blessings are to the horse racing. The main guest of honor is the High Lama, who presides over all events. He blesses the horses and riders before anything can take place. And with the blessings bestowed, let the festival begin. At the conclusion of the festival, the High Lama presents katas, or ceremonial white scarves, to the winners of the races and to their horses. The prizes are more for prestige, and there are lots of winners, it seems. Back in Litang, I consider my next move. There are rumors of other festivals in the region, but precise details are hard to come by. Meanwhile, I team up with other travelers to take trips to see the nomad herders on the grasslands nearby. In Tibetan, they are called drokpas, or dwellers of the black tent. The tent is woven from yak hair. Usually guarding the tent is a huge Tibetan mastiff on a strong rope also made from yak hair, which is a very good thing in our case, as the dog makes fierce lunges at interlopers. The inside of the black tent is smoky, with a stove burning yak dung as fuel. My Tibetan driver, educated in India, serves as translator. He explains why nomads are reluctant to sell yaks for meat. Raising yaks for meat is a Chinese idea, he says. The nomad word for wealth or treasure is nor, which translates to yaks on the hoof. Live yaks are far more valuable. They produce milk and wool. They are used for wedding dowries. They provide transport when shifting tent locations. The story of nomad survival is the stuff of legend. It started with domestication of wild yaks thousands of years ago. Yaks are superbly adapted to high altitude. Their long, shaggy coats help them withstand sub-zero temperatures. They are sure-footed on mountain slopes and traversing snowbound passes. The Latin name assigned to the yak is Bos grunniens, which means grunting ox. Why do yaks grunt? Rather like humans, it seems that yaks grunt when agitated, or when hungry, or calling their young. This makes them rather comical creatures. But yaks are serious business for the nomads. Tibetan nomads, in fact, are entirely dependent on their yaks for survival, and yaks depend on the vast grasslands found in Tibet. How vast? Well, ethnic Tibet covers a region of 2.3 million square kilometers, about the size of Western Europe. The region has its quota of desert and mountains, and valleys of rich grassland. Close to Litang lie the biggest grasslands of the entire Tibetan plateau. Tibetans are pastoral nomads, roving around in a constant quest to find the best grass for their herds, and to give their animals lots of exercise. The grasslands are used in rotation for grazing of yaks, sheep, goats, and horses. Being a nomad is not a job you apply for, it's a job you're born into, with generation upon generation of nomads passing along their considerable skills in dealing with animals, being their own vets, surviving freezing winters, and so on. Nomads get everything they need from their animals: milk, butter, cheese, yogurt, meat. Any surplus is used for bartering with farmers for barley flour, the staple food of Tibet. Even here, the yak enters the picture again, as roasted barley flour is kneaded into balls with the addition of yak butter and tea and yak cheese dust in preparation for eating. Nomads have figured out endless ways to utilize the gifts the mighty yak provides. Burning yak dung is the main source of fuel for nomads on a largely treeless plateau. Yak hair is used to make tents, rope, bags, blankets, and clothing. Yak hide is used for making boots. Yak butter is used as a cosmetic by women, who smear their face with the stuff to counter strong wind and sun. Yak hide is ingeniously used to make small vessels for river crossings. Yaks are beasts of burden, carrying tents, household goods, and sacks of barley flour when shifting camp. And there are numerous religious uses. Yak skulls, carved with sacred symbols, are left at shrines. Yak bone is used for making rosaries. Yak butter is used for lamps in temples. In pre-1950 Tibet, tax was collected from nomads in the form of sheep wool and yak butter. Nomads believed that this tax of yak butter went to Lhasa to light up the main temple with yak butter lamps and to provide the monks with yak butter tea. And this qualifies as the yak's greatest contribution of all, yak butter tea. I am parked over a cup of yak butter tea in a picnic tent. Here you can't avoid a cup of tea. Tibetan nomads drink up to 40 or 50 cups a day. They are addicted to tea. Black tea with rancid yak butter floating around in it, and salt instead of sugar. Good to counter freezing cold conditions with lots of fat content, but definitely an acquired taste.
Teşekkür ederim. Sevgili çok ongulak. Sevgili çok ongulak.
I have found my way to another horse racing festival, a rough day's journey by jeep from Litang. On arrival, nothing but a few white tents. Another dud on the horse racing circuit? Are we too early or too late? Sipping tea while pondering these questions. Black tea comes from China. In the 7th century Tang dynasty, Tibetan traders discovered tea on the eastern borders of Tibet in Yunnan. Tea quickly became a Tibetan staple. In exchange for tea, they traded horses. The Chinese cavalry needed war horses, and the Tibetans had developed a special bloodline of horses, a stocky breed renowned for endurance and stamina at high altitude. And so the tea horse road developed. Chinese tea going west, Tibetan horses going east. The route stretched several thousand kilometers, traversing numerous high passes and taking 3 months or more to complete. There were over 60 relay stations along the maze of routes. Litang was one of them, a market town trading in musk, furs, herbal medicines, salt, cloth, tea, and horses. Although the Chinese sold them the worst grade tea leaves, the Tibetans could never get enough of the stuff. At times, caravans of up to 500 yaks would converge in a town at the frontier of Tibet, waiting for tea to be loaded. This low-grade tea became such an addiction for the Tibetans that tea bricks, stamped with Chinese characters for the weight, were used as actual currency in the land of snows. The lucrative ancient trade in horses has long gone. The Chinese military are no longer interested in horses, but the Tibetan addiction to tea remains, and so does the nomad passion for horses. In the backcountry, a fast horse is a status symbol, providing transport over rugged terrain. And Tibetans love horse racing festivals in the summer. At this venue, I'm puzzled why there are so few tents. But disappointment turns to astonishment upon discovering that all the horsemen have decamped to the nearby sacred peak, where an extraordinary consecration ceremony is underway. Monks chant blessings, longhorns boom across the valley, smoke from burning juniper and incense billows into the air. At a large set of prayer flags, nomads throw paper squares into the air, embossed with the mythical wind horse carrying printed prayers to the heavens. Suddenly, the ceremony comes to a close, and all the nomads pack up the tents in a matter of minutes and head back for the main festival venue, where the nomad women are waiting, making final adjustments to their elaborate outfits. They're out to impress, dressed in their finest cloaks, with puffy orange headgear from this region, and hair braided in 108 strands, an auspicious number. Now it's a full-blown horse racing festival, with white tents stretching to the horizon. The crowd is split into two sides that form the actual barriers of the racetrack, with burly monks keeping them in line with a swinging whip. The monks take their seats. Riders take up starting positions with their trusty steeds, whose manes and tails are decorated with streams of ribbons. Warm-ups for the races feature individual stunt riders who show off their equestrian skills, like leaning off the horse to pick up ceremonial white scarves laid out on the ground. But some horses are skittish about running between lines of people. The festival launch develops into a kind of rodeo. The chaotic events go on for several days. A mix of stunt riding, racing, dancing, eating, drinking, and socializing. A giant picnic with horses, and Kampa cowboys showing off their skills. This is what I came to see, a breathtaking spectacle full of action and excitement, a gathering of nomad clans. Song and dance nomad style features foot stomping and playing the dramian, a Tibetan fiddle. These may be subtle protest songs, like the one you are listening to now, which is about the beauty of the Tibetan language for expressing emotions and ideas. It's a kind of protest song because the Tibetan language is under attack by Chinese authorities, who are removing Tibetan from school curriculums. All work and business in Tibet is conducted in Chinese language only. It's been fabulous to see the big horse racing festival, but I get the gut feeling that I'm witnessing a vanishing way of life. Coming back from the festival about 20 kilometers short of Litang, we spot a Chinese construction crew building a housing settlement intended for nomads. What will they do here in the middle of nowhere, with a highway running between the houses? Settling the nomads is a joke, says the driver. Chinese officials make all kinds of promises. medical facilities, schools, but these fail to materialize. The nomads are given a shell of a house, some initial payments, and then abandoned. Ex-nomads end up watching Chinese action movies on TV, getting drunk, arguing, playing pool. They spend state subsidies till the money runs out and then scramble to pay the bills. Bills they have never paid before, for electricity and for food and water. Nomads are proud, self-reliant people, used to wild open spaces by day and a canopy of stars by night. After settlement, they will be neither nomads nor farmers. They will become nobodies, unemployed. Unemployed because absolutely no provision has been made by Chinese authorities for training to adjust to settled life. No attempt to integrate settled nomads into urban areas. No job training, no language training. Nomads cannot read or write Chinese. They cannot even write in Tibetan. China calls them ecological migrants, the same term used by those displaced by dam construction. But outcasts would be closer to the truth. Nomads may wind up becoming alcoholics, or prostitutes, or beggars. Imagine someone telling you that your life has been put on hold, that your future has been cancelled, and that you will be living in limbo. The nomads end up here, and their yaks end up here. I find something very strange in the markets of Litang. Chinese butchers selling yak meat to Tibetans. Why on earth are Chinese involved in this trade? Well, when nomads are forcibly settled, their animals must either be sold to other nomads or sold to slaughterhouses. There is high demand among Chinese consumers for yak meat. In fact, some nomad herders are raising yaks for meat sales. Most Tibetans consider the slaughter of yaks to be very bad karma and want nothing to do with the trade. The old values of yak as nor or wealth prevail. Tibetan nomads will not work as yak butchers, but they will dress up in suits for employment. Yak suits, that is. With no job retraining programs and no language training provided, what is an unemployed nomad supposed to do? On the road from Litang through central Tibet to Lhasa, I compiled a short list. Working menial jobs like breaking rocks or road construction. Working in local restaurants, washing dishes, maybe serving yak burgers. Employment washing police cars. Washing cars is big business in Litang because there is a fine for driving a dirty car. Car wash places are either run by the local constabulary or must pay a kickback to them. With lots of dust in Litang, this is a growth industry. Real money can be made by the nomads in the spring by collecting exotic mushrooms and medicinal herbs in the highlands. These are in great demand. Highly prized is Yatsakunbu, or Chinese caterpillar fungus, valued for its supposed anti-aging and aphrodisiac properties, and for boosting the immune system. And now for the big bucks. Millions can be made from breeding Tibetan Mastiffs. The Tibetan Mastiff is a dog about the size of a St. Bernard and just as slobbery. It is thought to be the oldest guard dog in existence, with a bloodline going back thousands of years. The Tibetan Mastiff is now a status symbol among wealthy Chinese, like the red Tibetan Mastiff that sold for a jaw-dropping $1.5 million to a Chinese coal baron in 2011. But the Mastiff puppy was bred in a facility on the east coast of China, and no Tibetans were involved. All the breeding is done by Chinese entrepreneurs. Tibetans have no stomach for breeding and selling the dogs they consider their age-old friends. Here's another high-demand job that Tibetans balk at, posing as a smiling nomad on state TV. The Chinese propaganda machine likes to perpetuate the myth of laughing nomads who spend their days dancing and singing love songs as if they are living in an earthly communist paradise, where all their needs are taken care of by the benevolent Communist Party, from medical needs to education. Nomads see very little of this translated into action. They are mostly illiterate, and yet propaganda posters show them as great readers. And this poster depicts a Chinese surveyor on the high grasslands being assisted by laughing Tibetan nomads. But what is he surveying for? For the site of a new factory? For a mining site? To build a new megadam? Are Chinese helping Tibetans? Or are they just helping themselves to Tibet's valuable resources? Happy, smiling Tibetan nomads. They're shown on Chinese posters. They're singing and dancing on state TV. And they appear on stage as a sideshow packaged for Chinese and Western tourists in Lhasa. To get the real story on nomads, I need to interview them, but that could easily result in arrests. China cracks heads of those who dare to speak out. The only way would be to disguise faces and voices of those interviewed, but smuggling those interviews out would be extremely risky. I arrive at another idea: to head west, paralleling the route used by Tibetans escaping into India, and then interview nomads in exile. It's a long drop from the Tibetan highlands down into Nepal. With it goes a feeling of loss, leaving Tibet behind, and a feeling of claustrophobia to be in a big city again, after the wide open spaces of Tibet. But in a single bookstore in Kathmandu, you can find more English books about Tibet than in the whole of Lhasa. Every book ever written about Tibet can be found in Kathmandu, in print or out of print, a goldmine for someone researching like me. It doesn't take long to find answers to questions about nomads. The official Chinese point of view says climate change is at fault for the rapidly receding grasslands in Tibet and accuses nomads of being backward people who are destroying grasslands through overgrazing. But books by Western experts with over 20 years in the field offer quite contrary opinions. They point out that nomads have developed sophisticated means of utilizing limited resources over several thousand years, and that nomads are the real stewards of the grasslands, ensuring that the grasslands stay in good shape, knowing they must use them again for grazing. In Kathmandu, I chase up the history of Litang. The region has long been a hotbed of resistance to Chinese rule. Litang Monastery was bombed and strafed by Chinese planes in the late 1950s. The fierce Khampa nomads, quick-tempered, with allegiance to no master, were the key force behind guerrilla resistance to Chinese invaders from the 1950s to the 1970s. Tough Khampa fighters escorted the Dalai Lama when he escaped Tibet and fled to India in 1959. And on the internet, a search reveals the main reason the Litang horse racing festival was cancelled: politics. It's all about neutralizing the influence of the Dalai Lama, a factor that looms large in the drive to settle the nomads. On August 1st, 2007, at Litang Horse Racing Festival, a 53-year-old nomad called Rungye Adak snatched the microphone at center stage to make a short speech. He talked about problems created by Chinese officials, causing nomads to fight over land and water rights. He called for the release of the missing Panchen Lama, imprisoned by China, and for the return of the exiled Dalai Lama. From Kathmandu, I head west into India, bound for Dharamsala, seat of the Tibetan government in exile. I'm not sure what I will find. My approach is leave no stone unturned, and Dharamsala holds answers to the many questions I have about the nomads. I have dropped into Dharamsala for a cup of butter tea. No yak butter here. This is tea with Indian butter added. Tea time is an elaborate affair if it's part of a 3-day teaching by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, addressing an enthralled crowd of foreigners and a sea of maroon-robed nuns and monks. Sometimes what you set out to get is not what you end up with. I run into big problems when trying to interview escaped nomads. A major obstacle is the weird dialects spoken. But a greater obstacle is that even in exile, nomads are not willing to appear on camera for fear of endangering relatives back in Tibet. One of China's main exports is silence. Instead, I focus on a longer interview with Tenzin Norbu.
And now these Chinese policies, what they did was, they first removed the nomads from the grassland, blaming them for degrading the grassland. On one side, they are saying this nomad's life is a backward lifestyle. They want to educate the nomads. Educate the nomad for what? Because this is life that they want to live, that they have been living for thousands of years. Now, are they successful in educating the nomads in these concrete housings? Do we see any retraining programs before the nomads are moved? We see nothing. What we see is, in the end, these nomads are displaced, forcefully displaced from their grasslands. Now they have nothing to offer. Whatever they've known from their generations, the traditional knowledge, everything is gone. Now, even if they want to pass it to their grandchildren's, granddaughters, there is nothing. So now it is not too late to give the nomads what they actually want, to give the nomads the pride that they have in when they used to live happily with their herds. Now earlier, the Chinese, they actually want the nomads, they consider Tibet as a meat factory to get a whole supply of meat for the Chinese population. Now, since the nomads, they have their own religious belief, and they restrain themselves from killing the animals. They always want their wealth on the hoof. They are not concerned about any profits. They are not concerned about any cash demand. What they want to live is, they want to live simple and successfully on this Tibetan plateau. And now these policies since 1960s, they have been crumbling, they have been punishing these nomads in series of new policies. First, in the commune system, these nomads face a lot of problem, and later in the privatization, they face a lot of problem. And then this new policy which says abandon livestock to restore grasslands. That means, in a way, they want the nomads to get rid of their livestock, yaks, sheep. So without the yaks, the nomads have nothing to do. And some nomads, they have to sell their yaks on much lesser price. So in the end, these yaks end up in the slaughterhouse. They are never fell short of their daily basic needs like yak meat, butter, cheese, milk. They have plenty of these things. Now in the concrete resettled or the removed nomads, once they live in those camps, they have to adjust themselves to the urban life. They are wholly dependent on the state aid. Since these nomads are moved to these concrete blocks, is affecting the traditional economy in the Tibet, which we have for thousands of years, where the nomads, they used to get grain from the farmers, and in return they used to give yak meat, butter and cheese. So now the nomads are removed. Even if they want to get some grain, they have no money, they have no job, they are not trained. So from where they are going to get these daily basic needs like grains, which earlier they used to get very successfully, they used to get without any problem from these farmers. So in a way, this policy has also affected the traditional economy or the barter system. In a way, the nomads, they are moved, they are unemployed and their practices into alcoholism. And we receive the news that the newly settled nomads, sometimes they also become a mere scavengers of the metal scraps. It's very saddening to hear such news. And nomads, as they are very proud of themselves, of how they live and how sustainable they are, they don't need any modern gadgets to fulfill their needs. The policies, as a way, they are trying to control all the nomads in some concrete block. Now, we overheard that recently in those pastoral areas where the nomads used to herd the yaks and livestock, since the nomads are removed, they become very accessible to some mining companies. And we heard that a lot of small minings are popping up on those pastoral areas. So what does this mean? This means that once the policy is implemented, it is not regulated correctly. Now the nomads have nothing to say. Now once their mobility life is gone, everything is gone for the nomads.
The nomads have thousands of years of experience in handling grassland ecology. They have evolved with the grasslands and their yaks. The Chinese have zero experience with grasslands. Their initial forays into grasslands management have ended in disaster. In Chinese-controlled Mongolia, where pastoral nomadism existed for centuries, the nomads have mostly disappeared, and the grasslands have turned into wastelands. A number of factors brought this about. Mongolian nomads predominantly herded horses and Bactrian camels. China decided to greatly increase the number of cashmere goats in Mongolia because selling cashmere wool in Europe reaps tremendous profits. However, cashmere goats are not grassland friendly. They don't nibble grass, they rip it out. And their sharp hooves pierce the soil surface, leading to erosion. The degradation of the grasslands was compounded by the settling of Mongolian nomads in a land grab that paved the way for a massive influx of Chinese settlers and miners. The miners have polluted the landscape. The settlers broke up the ground to plant vegetables. Once loosened, the soil was picked up by the fierce winds of the Gobi, and entire regions were eroded and turned into dust. Also reduced to dust, whole regions at the eastern side of the Tibetan Plateau, where rapacious Chinese loggers have slashed forest cover by over 50% since invasion in 1950. Chinese soldiers and settlers wiped out most of Tibet's wildlife in the 1960s and 1970s, shooting wild animals for meat or for sport. Grasslands that were once teeming with gazelles, antelopes, wild asses, wild yaks and other wildlife are now empty. Should grassland management be entrusted to the same brutal regime that perpetrated these environmental disasters?
And on one side, the Chinese, they are blaming the nomads for the grassland degradation. And this grassland degradation has occurred due to the fencing policy. Because once a huge herd is fenced, so automatically the pasture inside the fence would be degraded. This fencing policy has also affected the migration of the antelopes. And now you have the railway crossing these pasture lands. So from all the angles, the Chinese policy has seen that these nomads are the ones which are the main obstacle for any development projects, which actually we don't want. Millions of tons of carbons are trapped in these grasslands. So talking from scientific point of view, these grasslands are very important to maintain the whole carbon balance on the Tibetan Plateau. At present, in one of a UNDP report, we are surprised to see that the rate of conversion of these grasslands or rate of desertification on the Tibetan Plateau is more than 2,000 square kilometers per year. So this is a huge rate of desertification. And now with the nomads being removed, there is nobody there to take care of these grasslands, to restore the grasslands. And this rate of desertification will further increase. And in 2020 and 2035, you'll see the whole grassland has been converted into deserts. And on top of that, this desertification is hugely enhanced by the climate change, global warming, and the desert storm that we get it from Taklamakan deserts and from the whole of the Mongolia. So this huge speed up in the rate of desertification on the Tibetan plateau. And these nomads are the only one who can successfully restore these grasslands. And now with the nomads being removed from the grasslands, and on top of that, the mining companies on these grasslands, there's nothing left to combat this desertification. The Tibetan nomads are the best stewards of the Tibetan grasslands. They are part of the solution. They are not part of the problem.
Other experts put that more bluntly, as in the following quote: China is causing a cultural genocide by removing people from the livelihood they have known for millennia, condemning the nomads to live in concrete ghettos, and leaving the grasslands to further degrade. The grasslands cannot be maintained or restored without Tibet's nomads. That stark analysis comes from Tibet Justice Center in California. In the end, I didn't manage to get any decent interviews with nomads, but you have been listening to their voices all along in the soundtrack for this film. They sing poetic love songs. They sing about the making of yak hair tents, about the summer meadows full of wildflowers, about the treasures of their land and the sacred mountains and lakes, all treasures that have been taken from them. Even the songs have been taken from them. Under Chinese rule, a number of songs are banned, particularly those that praise the Dalai Lama, and prominent singers have been arrested and jailed for composing subversive songs. Here are some quotes from interviews with former nomads in Dharamsala.